The climax of man's life has come at last. The Oriental despot sits enthroned. Before him come the peoples of the earth. Here are no men, no women, boys or girls struggling for rank, wealth, class, or power. No race or tribe has standing here. All walls that separate, divide, by this moving drama are pushed aside. Each life is freed of all pretense. Each shadowy seeming swept away by the mighty spread of ceaseless light. I was sick, comfortless. I was hungry and desperate. I was lonely and wretched. I was in prison, forsaken. Strange, awful words from him. Words more searching followed after. I know your tasks were manifold. Unyielding claims consumed your thoughts. There was no time to be at ease with deeds, to give yourself beyond your creeds. Oh, I know about your temperament and your health. Somehow you could not manage all your chores. Excuses came to reinforce the empty feeling of your heart. I know how hard it was for you. You did not want to be an easy touch. Beyond all else, your ties of blood. Charity must begin at home. And besides, you didn't know. But are you sure? Do you recall the flashes of concern that held you in your place that day? I see you do remember well. Again they came, and then again, until at last they came no more. Only the hollow darkness of the self cut off from all the pain and pathos of the world. No word of mine can alter what your days have done. The story of your life is what the judge reveals. From this relentless judgment, is there no appeal? There is a unity that binds all living things in a single whole. This unity is sensed in many ways. Sometimes when walking alone in the woods, far from the traffic which makes up the daily experience, the stillness settles in the mind. The imprisoned self seems to slip outside its boundaries, and the ebb and flow of life is keenly felt. One becomes an indistinguishable part of a single rhythm, a single pulse beat. Sometimes there is a moment of complete and utter identity with the pain of a loved one. All the intensity and all the anguish are felt. One enters through a single door of suffering into the misery of the whole human race, with no margin left to mark the place which was one's own. What is felt belongs nowhere, but is everywhere, binding and holding in a tight circle of agony until all of life is gathered into a single timeless gasp. There are other moments when one becomes aware of the thrust of a tingling joy that rises deep within until it bursts forth in radiating happiness that bathes all of life in its glory and its warmth. Pain, sorrow, grief are seen as joy becoming, and life gives a vote of confidence to itself, defining its meaning with a sureness that shatters every doubt concerning the broad, free purpose of its goodness. There are the times of personal encounter when the knowledge of caring binds two together, and what is felt is good. There is nothing new nor old, only the knowledge that what comes as the flooding insight of love binds all living things into a single whole. The felt reverence spreads and deepens until to live and to love are to do one thing. To hate is to desire the non-existence of the object of hate. To love is the act of adoration and praise shared with the Creator of life as the be-all and the end-all of everything. Of everything that is. And yet, there always remains the hard core of the self, blending and withdrawing, giving and pulling back, accepting and rejecting, yielding and unyielding. What may this be but the pulsing of the unity that binds all living things in a single whole? The God of life extending himself in all the manifold glories of his own creation. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. in thy book all my members were written, and in continuance of fashion when as yet they did not exist. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Whither shall I flee from thy presence? Jesus and the Gothic principle. And the concept of the Gothic arch is one of the great creative visitations of the mind of God manifesting itself in the minds of men. Here is a grand, binding conception. The pillars grounded in the earth, locked into the earth, holding, steadying, guaranteeing, sustaining, supporting. The arches vaulting into infinity. This is it. The finite, the infinite, the boundless, the bound, the timeless, the time-bound, the universal, the particular, the mind, the body. What a moment in the history of man when this almost terrifying insight became a part of his tool for understanding and interpreting the meaning of his pilgrimage and the meaning of his journey. For man is a creature. He is earth-bound. His body has affinity with the other bodies of aliveness on the planet. In important ways, he does have the body of an animal, the face of a man, and something in him, deep at his center, that always wants to fly. This is man. This is man. Creature. And whenever he ignores his creatureliness, this other dimension of him first is threatened, and then, as some guarantee against a sense of complete oblivion if this happens, the mind spins dreams and aspirations and fantasies, as it were, that will continue the transcendence of his creatureliness. But he is a creature. He is a space binder. This is man. And a part of his security is in establishing affinity with all of the other space-binding units in existence. And if he prostitutes this aspect of his life, he threatens everything else. Go, wondrous creature, mount where science guides. State the planets and regulate the sun. Instruct the planets in which orbs to run. Then drop into thyself and be a fool. This is what the poet is talking about. The synthesis has to be there. Because man is not only a space binder, but man is a time binder. There is some aspect of his personality that can never be imprisoned by the events of his life. Nothing that can happen to him can quite contain him. No expression of his life can ever fully and adequately say who he is. If I were to ask you, name one thing that you can do now that totally and completely represents you. You'd run through your mind, you'd select the choicest thing, and you'd project it, but before it left you, you'd see that something wasn't included that was very important. So over and over again, no experience, and this is so important, no experience can quite contain all of me. No event can quite hold all of me. For I am a time binder. Some aspect of me is always the observer of me in my space-binding activity. I am an observer of myself as a participant in what I'm doing. Since we have been sitting here, some of you have been back home, looking straight at me, through me into next week. And yet you're seated here. Something of you stands outside of the event and the eventful. And this is the essential experiential ground for the notion that has come up again and again in all great religions, that even death cannot hold man's spirit. Because if death is an event in life, and man is never quite contained in any event in life, then even in death, which is eventful, there is an aspect of man that stands outside of it, watching. After 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus was hungry. And the tempter said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." Bread. Bread. The most natural thing for a hungry man to want. And the Master said, it is written that man must not live by bread alone, but by every word that issues out of the mouth of God. Now, I said that in about a minute, but perhaps the Master was trying to get this out over a long stretch of agonizing interval, for I think it must have happened this way. I'm hungry. What does that have to do with what I experienced at the baptism, when the heavens opened and the Spirit of God descended upon me like a dove, and I heard with my ear my Father tell me yes. What does bread have to do with that? But I'm fortunate. What about those who are hungry and have not heard my Father's voice? What is there that can give to them a hold? So, man must not live by bread. But everything in him knew that this was not right. Man does live by bread, but man does not live by bread. And over, this must have gone on through all the late watches of the night. Something is here, but it escapes me. But I can't keep from seeking to ferret it out, to woo it out, to winnow it out. Somewhere in this fever in my spirit is the cure for the fever. Man does not live by bread. And then it happened. Out of nowhere, but from everywhere, one word was heard at all the levels of his awareness, and that word was alone. That's it. Man does not live by bread alone, which says that he does live by bread, but not bread alone. How then may some balance be made between these two necessitous pressures? And it comes at the answer. Man does not live by bread alone. Yes, yes, yes. But, or in addition to, every word that issues from the mouth of God, there is more to man than his creature needs, even though man is a creature. There is a part of the life of man that is rooted in the earth. The pillars of the arch, grounded. But there also is the great sweep of his spirit, the great insistent hungers of his heart to know and be known, to trust and be trusted, to understand and be understood, to love and be loved. The mind to be nourished by ideas upon which it feeds. This is the sweep of the arches. Man then does not live by bread alone, but he does live by bread. The world, if I may say this, which reflects the effect of the Greek on our whole Western civilization and culture, that practically the practical side of life is bread, and the other side of life is something else. This vicious dualism that destroys the heart of religious experience. But at any rate, life is practical. I must have bread to eat. I must find some way by which I can protect myself from the impersonal operation of the social order upon me that dehumanizes and flattens me out. I must protect myself against the impersonal operation of the world of nature, so that even if I go into an alien environment, I can carry with me a built-in environment on my back. For I must have a windbreak of protection behind which I might nestle and reproduce my kind, and live with some measure of tranquility and dignity against the impersonal violences that surround me. I must have this. So the Master comes through, to borrow a phrase, trailing clouds of glory. I recognize, says he in substance, that life is practical, that man must have bread to eat, that man must make the creature adjustment to the creature dimension of their total life. They must find ways by which they can honor their creatureliness, their creaturehood. But the bias, the accent, the leaning, the emphasis of his life must be on the sweep of the arches, the things that nourish the heart, mind and the spirit. And this is so difficult, because things are so real. It is sobering to know that long after I'm dead, somebody may be wearing my wristwatch just as if I'd never been. And it may be, you see, that in a moment of weakness, if I can find some way by which I can feel within myself the kind of permanency that superficially I recognize to be an attribute of things, then I might insulate myself against the final violation of my life by planting my persona on something that will be here when no longer I am remembered. So I want to fling my private defiance into the face of that which seems to be declaring finally my non-existence. I know, however, that the only way, finally, that I can honor the demands of my creatureliness is to recognize that in a very important way, they are the pillars of the temple. And they support and sustain the great sweeps of the vault into the heavens. So the timeless and the time-bound, the universal and the particular become one rhythm. The eternal and the time-bound, the infinite and the finite, one pulse beat, life, death, one pulse beat. God contains it all. So, I love the Master for the way he worried this insight into existence. And gave to our profoundest awareness a sense of timeless significance. I saw a man pursuing the horizon Round and round he sped. I was disturbed at this, so I accosted the man. I said, "It is futile. You can never. You lie," he cried, and ran on. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. If I take a wing to the morning and fly to the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand hold me, and thy right hand shall steady me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. The finite and the infinite, the timeless and the time-bound, the pillars and the great creative sweep of the arches. One creative beat